This is such an important time for everybody right now, and we could not be more excited to have you here. So tell your friends, bring them in for the entire weekend. You're gonna learn, you're gonna get excited, and you're also gonna be able to ask the filmmakers exactly what you wanna know about film, right? So now's the time. One of the panels that I spoke to before this came together and they said, I said, what's the passion behind this? And they said, well, we asked the question and we answered it through film. And I thought, that's really cool. Anyways, I'm Diana Deem, MC for the gathering. I just want to give it up for this man over here who's very humble and quiet, Greg Reitman, and then also his team. They have really worked hard to make this happen, and thanks to the university as well. So, okay, so thank you, Greg, for everything you're doing, and thank you to Byron wherever he is. So let's think about this for a second. How are we going to be brave and bold to tell the story going forward, to drive solutions for the planet? That's what we want to kind of set the stage for literally today. So we've got some, we think to ourselves, okay, how do we create, how do we deliver, and how do we solve, right? And in that creativity, how do we reach through education? So again, that's the foundation for this. We're very excited to invite the first panel up. And it's all about how do you drive sustainability in practices in production, in the studios. So come on up, and Barbara will be leading this, Barbara Marshall. And yeah, come on up, let's do this.
Is that okay? Okay, so we're here to talk sustainability in production, and we're going to do some introductions, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, first of all, I'd just like to thank Matt, Rachel, and Barbara for joining us. I'll start. One of the two Barbaras. It's not often that we get two Barbaras on stage at the same time. So, I'm Barbara Marshall. I work for HP. Some of you may know the Hewlett-Packard company. We make printers and we make computers. And the reason I'm involved in the Blue Water Film Festival is because I lead our media and entertainment strategy. And I work in the high-end workstation division. We make the computers that are used in visual effects, animation, broadcast, video editing. And the reason I'm here, and I'm now secretary on the Blue Water Film Festival board, is because sustainability is at the center of HP's strategy. So it means a lot to me personally, but it is also fundamental to our business. So I am delighted to be hosting this panel. I'm going to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourself and your role and your organization. So let's start here. Gentleman first today.
Sounds good. My name's Matt Adler. I'm the Senior Director of Corporate and Sports Partnerships at the Green Sports Alliance. And we are a nonprofit focused on using the platform of sports to help reach fans and really improve their behaviors at home by seeing what your favorite team's doing at the stadium and taking some of that with you.
I'm Rachel Werbel. I work with Green Spark Group, not Green Sparks Alliance, so it's a separate company. And my role, technically on my business card, it says I'm a business development and education specialist, but I do a variety of roles there, from trainings, on-set production, consulting, advising, off-set remote advising, and just learning as much as I can about the tech and the practices so I can help advise people.
I'm Barbara Lange. Am I on? Yeah. And I'm founder and CEO of my own consultancy called Kaiba 121, where I advise media tech organizations, so not so much production, but more about the technology side on how they can be more sustainable in their actions in the media and entertainment and general technology sector now too. So, and before that, I was the executive director of the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, which really informed my knowledge base on media tech and all that's involved there. So, And that's where I met Barbara many years ago.
That's
yeah.
right. Yes, indeed. So audience, are you, hands up, who is a filmmaker or aspiring to be a filmmaker? There's one at the back. Okay. I'm just trying to get a gauge for like who you all are and what your interests are. So are you all in art school or media and entertainment, film, documentaries? Ah. Oh, fantastic.
awesome.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. Who's actively thinking about sustainability and environmental issues? Sounds like all of you then. Great. Okay, so we're here, as I said, to talk about the impact that production, media and entertainment content has and how producers can mitigate the impact on the environment. So we've got a couple of people now who are advising and consulting. So let's again go along the line. Matt, can you tell us some of the challenges that you're seeing in the sports arena? And
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to start, sports are not inherently sustainable. You got millions of people flying in from all over the place to watch an event, eat a bunch of food, and drink out of single-use plastics, and then go back home and kind of get home the same way. And so we have to start with the baseline, really measure what your wastewater and energy is at that venue, and then figure out, mostly low-cost, high-impact ways to reduce. One key strategy is to look at your energy, and something simple like LED lighting can make a big impact, along with occupancy sensors. So one of our founders always says the most sustainable building is the one that's not on, and so it makes a lot of sense. Outside of that, when you're kind of looking at water conservation, you can do rainwater collection. So that's a really interesting case study with the Seattle Kraken, where they actually collect all the rain and then freeze it for the ice hockey team. So pretty good circularity, and they can also irrigate the landscaping around the stadium. And then just having low flow toilets, waterless urinals, and automated fixtures as well is a key. And then outside of that, I think waste is kind of the big target. It's a huge challenge, but then huge opportunity as well. And so what we're seeing now is really the need to sort through every bag of waste at a stadium. And so it's labor intensive. It costs a lot of money to do it, but it's the right thing to do. It's how you get high diversion rates, and then doing things like reusables, which seems sort of simple. Like, why would we not reuse things that we're eating or drinking out of? But it's just a challenge at that scale. So just proving out that you can do it, starting with a pilot in a small area of the venue, and then expanding to stadium or arena wide.
And when you say it's a challenge, I mean, presumably we used to do that before plastic became all pervasive. So is it a psychological challenge, or is there really a reason?
I would say it's mostly cost at this point. If you want to go to a reusable program, it's about twice as much per cup, which you can get ROI if you actually collect and reuse, but without a waste sorting operation, your return rate won't be very high, and then those reusable cups aren't very sustainable anymore. So it's a bit of a mind shift, and it's also a purchasing decision. So as more folks adopt it and the scale increases, the cost will go down, and then we'll be able to see this scale up.
And do you work with venues that are the stadiums that the sports teams play in, or do you also work with the sports teams in their own facilities and practice?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a good example would be like SoFi Stadium, where we work with the stadium itself, which has multiple tenants. The tenants, often teams, they're not as, I won't say interested, but they just don't have control over the operations or purchasing decisions, but they're really interested in gamifying and engaging with fans and building brand loyalty. So how we support a team is a little bit different than how we support a venue, which is often focused on the ops, wastewater, and energy. And then we work with the leagues that they're a part of as well, and they're interested in the macro, like what regulations are coming down the pike that may affect my teams, and how can I sort of de-risk my league by getting out ahead of environmental issues.
And do we have any favorite teams, and how green are they?
Steelers.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not allowed to pick favorites, but being in San Diego, I will do a plug for the Padres, because they were the first MLB venue run entirely off renewable energy. They did a nice pilot with SDG&E to put solar on site, so the entire top of the venue has solar panels. And then they're actually leveraging their platform to comply with local law and get Republic to start composting specifically for them, so they accept some of the materials that are really hard to divert, and that way they don't have to use plastic in their venue and can have a really high diversion rate as well. So they're doing great.
Any Padres fans here?
Bless you.
Got one.
Woo.
You, sir.
Support a fan.
Excellent. Well, there you go. Now you've got a reason to support them because they're on the right path. Okay, Rachel, can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you're seeing in your field?
Sure. I mean, the one on something how do I say this? Because we want to stay positive, right? We want to always be focused on solutions. But sometimes to find the solution, we have to be honest about the problem. One of the bigger problems in, I think, let's just say onset production is there's a history of associating emissions from onset production with waste. And so people, when you come in as a job, like one of the jobs we have students is eco-PA, right? You come in and you help collect data and you help educate people. But oftentimes people will consider that person what I call a waste concierge, and they don't fully grasp that. And I'm actually gonna throw a number at you. A tentpole film has 3,370 tons of CO2e that it emits. That 56% of that, I didn't write the percentage on that, but over 50%, I think it might be in the 60s for tentpole, it's fuel. So one of our biggest challenges is just educating and reiterating, it's fuel, it's fuel, it's fuel. And then the other hard thing, okay, we know it's fuel, but how do we make it easy? How do we make it easy for people to switch to renewable energy? How do we make it easy for them to use grid power instead of diesel generators? Or battery electric storage systems, BESSes, instead of diesel generators. And that's where we need infrastructure, and we need training, and also we need a new generation to start asking your teachers in school now, and asking the people who, where you're renting your equipment, and for this equipment, and to try it out so we can put the systems into place so people do know how to use it, and it becomes a really easy routine and not this new, difficult, unknown thing. I've never done it before, it's so hard.
That's a really important part. Do you see the way forward is demand driven as opposed to top down?
I think it's both, because I think when you have a really strong sustainability department at a studio, at a corporation, or UPM, a unit production manager, who runs the show pretty much on set, when they're like, no, we're doing it sustainably, it happens because they're the boss. But sometimes you don't have that much power. Like sometimes an organization maybe can't say you have to do it this way, but they can recommend it. And that's when we really, having the people on the ground that care a lot, that it's important for it to come from both directions. But leadership that cares and is going to budget for the extra time it may take to unbuild a set so you can reuse the materials instead of recycle the materials or landfill the materials. That takes some organization and timing and patience, and like understanding that some things are going to cost more, some things are going to cost neutral, and some things will save money. Like if you get a good system for a battery energy storage system, or a hybrid generator, they're going to be more expensive to rent weekly, but you're going to have, depending on how long the production is, it'll be exponential with thousands of dollars of savings in fuels, fuel singular. But you need someone at the top that's seeing that big picture and is able to get all of these departments out of their silos, so that and just decide we're doing it this way.
Yeah, that really reminds me. I used to work at the BBC, and when I was there, they had this huge scenery department. To your point, scenery was saved and repurposed and stored. You had warehouses full of different sets. There's a cost associated with storage and managing all of those scene elements versus trashing it, starting again for the next show. And unfortunately, since then, the BBC sold off its scenery and doesn't have the storage facilities, and I don't think retains its storage, its scenery the way it did.
It's my understanding that that is a similar, a similar thing happened across the board. Although there's still, and I think, so I don't know the specifics, you know, this is very deep into a studio or a stages organization, that there usually are some reuse areas. Like I was just at a stage where there is like a section where, in the construction space where, okay, if you put materials, well, if you put some material, you could put he put some cabin logs there and someone took them. You can put some foam boulders, another show will take them, right? But then they don't have the level of storage they used to have, is my understanding. And some of that also comes because designers want to come in and they want to build from scratch, their point of view. So it's also, I mean, it's a big...
It's the same as why do people tear old houses down and build new houses instead of renovating? Sometimes it's because that's what they want.
We want what we want.
Partly it's because sometimes it's more cost effective.
Yeah, sometimes it definitely is more cost, like, unfortunately.
Yeah, because we're not pricing
Right, we're
the
not...
impact on the environment when we assess prices.
I just said this I went to, LA County is doing a new sustainability plan, and I went to a workshop, and one of the things I said is, I was like, make it more expensive to landfill foam. Yes. If they can't landfill foam, then it's not cheap. And then they have to find something cheaper, because it's all about the budget. I mean, 90% about the budget.
Unfortunately, money makes the world go round still, So, Barbara, tell us a little bit about your organization and how you're helping the technology companies.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest challenge that I'm facing is education, understanding. So I'm dealing with the technology companies that enable these productions to happen. So, you know, people who are manufacturing hardware, but also a lot of software. And that part of the industry is also made up of big names that we recognize, but lots and lots of small to medium-sized companies that nobody's ever heard of, with you know, a few hundred people who are working remotely and developing software that's in the cloud, and they think they're green because they're remote and working in the cloud. So it's this real, you know, education and knowledge sharing exercise that I'm going through for the last several years since I've launched my business, which is good because I feel like now people start understanding, and we're using the same lingo and understanding what, you know, how to tackle some of these issues. And so the biggest challenge, I think, is to get them to be you know, ready. I mean, the other part of the exercise is that regulations around the world are helping to drive some of these actions. And, you know, here in the United States, we have other issues. But Europe is very proactive in terms of pushing regulations. So these small to medium-sized companies are being forced by their customers, so the BBCs of the world or the Skies of the world or what have you, are driving their vendors to behave in certain ways. And now these small to medium-sized companies are like, I don't know what to do. And so then they turn to people like me, hopefully, to help them get ready and to operate in a certain way. Some of it comes down to very basic fundamentals of saving, just common sense. Matt, you were saying about lights, you know, lighting, storage, turning off equipment that's not, you know, you don't need to leave things on 24/7. So some of that is pretty fundamental, and then you get into deeper discussions around how, if you're manufacturing hardware, where are you sourcing your you know, where your suppliers are coming from. And so
it's a materials.
It's a material thing too. And also then if you're creating hardware, so where are you sourcing your raw materials from? How are you manufacturing? How are you shipping? How are you packaging and then shipping? And then also now some manufacturers are really looking at the life cycle of that hardware and to the point of what happens afterwards. So now you get to the point, can you refurbish? Can you recycle? Can you upcycle? the worst thing ever is to throw it away. There's always going to be some purpose for the content. But all of this dials all the way back to pre-planning. Plan with sustainability in mind. And if you do that, you do have to break a lot of, as Rachel says, you have to break a lot of sort of rules that have been in place for decades. But innovative thinking and just thinking about sustainability, every time you have a budget question, a financial budget question, you should have the same sustainability question. What impact does it have? And if you do that, you integrate sustainability from the outset, and it ultimately trickles down, and it becomes pervasive within the organization.
So I'm going to ask all of you this question, but you're saying that there is legislation that is forcing companies to think about this. From your point of view, are companies coming to you, or are you having to go out and find them? Yeah, how much willingness is there to play?
It's a great question because it's evolved. When I started out, I was looking for people. I was out there looking. I was too early in some cases, because 2 years later, now those people are coming back to me and saying, I'm ready now. And partly, one particular client in particular was because their customer, a very well-known studio in Hollywood, was asking them, what's your sustainability plan? And they were like, we have no plan. So then they called me. So it's starting to turn, and I think that's because, and I believe that the studios, the content creators, whether they're studios, broadcasters, all of them, they control a lot. And if they get their suppliers to behave a certain way, it's a fast pathway towards a better place. I mean, fast is relative, but it's a straighter path maybe, because you need the business.
Pincer movement.
Pincer movement,
Yes.
exactly.
And what about you, Rachel? Do you have to go and find people, or do they come to you?
I mean, finding clients is always, you gotta be out there showing your face and being like, hey, we're here, we do this, and reminding people. But all of the big studios have an end of the year report that has their emissions. So most of their productions need someone that's going to calculate the carbon. That's one of the other things we do. We aggregate the data to calculate the carbon footprint using some of the industry's tools for carbon footprints. So I say we still have to go to network.
It's biz dev and
yeah, but
like
but everyone,
organization.
it's right now. People are still. We haven't seen a shift that people aren't wanting to calculate the carbon footprint. It's still valuable for them.
You bring up an important point. I'm guessing you guys already know this, but in the US now, it's law, isn't it, that you have to produce a sustainability report at the end of the year. I'm proud to say that HP had been doing that voluntarily for 10 years before it became a law. But when making purchasing decisions in whatever aspect of life, whether it's in your production or whether it's in your day-to-day life, ask questions about the vendors, the people you're buying from. What are they? What is their attitude to sustainability? Have they built that into their product life cycle? Can you see their report, their annual report? So that I think is one of the big messages to all of us, to consumers as a whole.
Yeah,
Barbara, you wanted to say?
I think you have to be a discerning consumer, whether you're in business or in your private life, and look for things like B Corp or Fit for Future or different. They're not all perfect, but or if an organization has been third-party audited by, GRI or share their data with third parties, because I do also think that we're in a space of a lot of greenwashing. I just did a small research project where I looked at a number of media tech companies, small, medium enterprises. They're not required to do anything, and they say a lot on their websites, and there's no backup to what they say. So you have to be a really discerning consumer, and that's where I think the the content creators who are pushing these messages could really require really very specific of their suppliers, and then like you can't just say it. You need to be third-party audited so that we can confirm that it's not just your word, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Matt, what about your organization? I know you're a not-for-profit, but
Yep. Yeah, essentially we're like an association for folks that run live events and want to learn how to do so more sustainably. So it depends on the stakeholder. Like corporations, they would love to work with sports teams on sustainability. Getting the sports teams to want to work with those corporations, not as easy. And then getting the sports teams to take action. We work with the folks that are doing all this voluntarily because most often professional sports teams in the U.S. are private organizations, so they're not, required to report anything, to your point about HP doing it voluntarily. So what are the levers that, influence a billionaire owner of a team to care about sustainability? It's engaging with fans, it's being seen as a pillar of your community, and it's making that community impact. So there's lots of efforts you can take, like, I guess diverting food waste, like composting and then collecting that and recovering it, anything that's good to eat, giving that back to the community. And then same thing with donating and reusing things within the stadium. Those are pretty valuable pieces of material, and so being able to find a new home can help you divert waste and also provide some really nice materials for folks. So I think there's different levers, and then like college campus, we work with some athletic departments, group of students that really care about sustainability can move the needle a lot faster on a college campus than, me as a Lions fan saying, hey, Ford family, I really care about sustainability. They may not listen, but I'd say the other stakeholder group we work with is AEG from the music sustainability perspective, and I'd say music is leading the way when it comes to sustainability, whether it's, Billie Eilish or Coldplay demanding changes to the venue in order to host them. Or just fans being very conscious about sustainability and sort of demanding festivals and tours to do more. So I think as the consumers, we have a lot of power in this.
that's a really positive message. I'm really, really pleased to hear that. I think now I'd like to segue into the conversation we were having earlier in the green room, very animated conversation about a very hot topic, AI and sustainability. And can the two go together in the same sentence? Do you want to start,
Yeah, I'm
Matt?
happy to go. So a lot of what we try and get folks to do is measure their sustainability metrics, and so just having like automation and machine learning to help with that would save a ton of time. And I'd say some of the biggest challenges in our field, besides not having leadership necessarily prioritize sustainability or having a formal budget to focus on sustainability in sports, the biggest challenge is really just most folks that work on sustainability are doing that as an add-on to their job. They're volunteering, they care about it, and so if it's a part of your job, but you also have to do marketing, or you also have to do ops or facilities, then anything that can save you time and make you more efficient is gonna be really beneficial to the industry and to that person as well.
That's a really good point. And we are seeing increasingly, aren't we, that AI is automating repetitive tasks, really helping with the data analytics. So that's a very positive use case. Are there any particular AI apps that are designed to help, or are people just having to build their own large language models and analytics databases?
Yeah, right now there's some like platforms out there that do some of the data entry for you. Like it's more automated, but it's pretty expensive. It's like $50K a year. So if you're, don't have a budget, then you're probably not going to invest in that. So I think there's definitely a big demand for any technology that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg that can help with that efficiency, I think.
Okay, great. And then Rachel, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I love that it can help people. This is a real problem that a lot of people that are passionate are getting more put on their plate with sustainability, and especially when there's not top-down leadership. But if we're going to be using AI, we need to be capturing the emissions that are being created from our use, because it uses a lot of energy. And I also, we're really obsessed with emissions right now because we're in triage mode with emissions because of climate change and 2C, right? Or 1.5C, 2C now. We keep going back and forth.
Yeah, but we're...
But the other... We're past 1.5. The other thing, though, is water. Like, it uses a lot of water. I mean, all of our tech does.
For cooling, because the huge data centers
Yeah.
need to be water cooled to.
So I'm like, we were talking about, we have solutions for this. They're going to be more efficient facilities, but we need to be, like, let's be aware of what we're doing, right? It's like when you eat candy, like.
Total cost of ownership.
Yeah,
Even your candy bar, what's the total cost of ownership? Not just what you paid.
Right. And if I want to, I mean, now I don't have a choice. When I do Google search to do my own research, they give me an AI summary. So I'm involved regardless, but I'm assuming Google is including that in their carbon emissions, their footprint at the end of the year. But let's be aware of what we're doing. I think one of the things, like and I'll stop, when we were talking about reusables, like, we've gotten used to shortcuts, and this is another new shortcut that we're gonna get really used to really quickly, and there are impacts. All of our shortcuts, historically, there have been impacts. And now we're trying to retrofit the system or go back or bring back more traditional things like using a cup, taking cups with you, washing things.
So when we find what we think are efficiencies, like disposable cups, because hey, you don't need dishwashers or humans to wash things
Cars, because there's no poop, there's no manure on the street anymore.
Yes.
That was amazing.
But then there's always an environmental cost, which if you don't factor it in, distorts the cost savings of the.
Right. And then I have a whole other thing about the crisis of meaning, a future
Humanity.
meaning of Christ, a future crisis of meaning that might occur, because we have a lot of high school jobs that won't exist. All these little things. I think humans get a lot of meaning from doing, and of course we can, as someone told me, we can upskill. Maybe we'll find other meaning, but I'm worried about people also. Anyway. I'm like, I guess, contrarian.
Yeah, no, it's a good conversation. Barbara?
I agree and respect everything that you say. I guess I would say innovation. It's a time of innovation also. I was just reading something recently this morning about the Institute for Structural Engineering and how they are in a kind of a boom period right now because they have to build, the built environment has to be more sustainable, right? And using different materials, green concrete, for example, right? Concrete's one of the worst offenders in terms of emissions generation. We don't really think of concrete, but it's everywhere.
And sand. And we have a sand crisis because of it.
So, I mean, so we need to innovate ourselves out of these issues. So for young people coming into the field, I feel like I would take the approach that there's a lot of innovation opportunity. And that goes for the technology too, in terms of the improvements that AI will likely make over the next decade in terms of more efficient use of AI and data centers being much more efficient as well. But the truth of the matter is, I think also it's really fundamental about education and understanding. So you can't make a decision about things if you don't know, if you don't have any information to make the decision. My example that I use all the time is, and I hate it, but calories at Starbucks, right? So the black coffee's a 5-calorie thing, and the Frappuccino that you really want is like 1,000 calories, right? So you make the choice, and every once in a while you can have the $1,000, they do cost $1,000 too, don't they? The 1,000-calorie Frappuccino. But now at least you have some information, and obviously that's a very simple explanation. But if we have more data that people can digest, then they can begin making smarter choices. Without making without that information, you're just going to keep making the same decisions that you've always made. So it's incumbent upon us, I think, as an industry to help drive some of those changes, I think, that information.
And then in terms of close to home practical use cases of AI, I know, Barbara, you were talking how you use it. Can you talk, share a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm a one-woman band, and so I found that AI has, and it really bubbled up at the time when I started my business, so I use it a lot, almost, well, maybe not daily, but pretty regularly, to help me with thought processes, to construct ideas, and then it helps me advance in my productivity. I don't trust it 100%. I still,
Fact check it.
I'm a trained chemist, so I have a scientific method, so I definitely try to ask it, confirm, or give me references, and then I check the references to make sure that they're not like kooky references from some obscure site that you've never heard of. So it's a great tool, but you can't use it without, discretion and making sure that you're, fact-checking it a little bit too.
So I know we've got the 5-minute warning. Does that give us 5 minutes for questions, or have we got questions after 5 minutes? Okay, all right, great. So we can continue. Matt and Rachel, are you using AI in your day-to-day work in any shape or form?
I don't use it too much, but I would say it's nice if you're trying to reach a certain stakeholder, and it can just kind of tell you what maybe makes them tick and why they may care about sustainability. So
you'll interrogate ChatGPT just to get a little bit of background on.
Yep, get an intro to someone. I do want to say something about the concrete, though. I think when you're building a venue, especially a large sports stadium, the construction process is the equivalent of operating that venue for 30 years, which is the entire life cycle of that venue. So the decisions you make when you build that venue are critical to how sustainable it is. And if you think about sustainability from the very beginning, you can have a really sustainable building and then get certifications and attract top talent and get World Cup hosting rights, all the different things that come along with just having a little foresight when it comes to design. So I think that's really important.
Again, I think you made the point, it's all about planning. Plan for sustainability. Don't think of it as an afterthought.
Or an add-on. Not an add-on, not an afterthought. It needs to be embedded, woven into every decision you make. And it just becomes the new way of business, right? It's not, we're doing one thing sustainable because they need us to do this sustainable. This client wants us to be sustainable, or this production company, this studio wants this production to be sustainable. It's, no, let's all learn how to be sustainable all the time. Period.
So, final question, quick round. Looking ahead, what's the biggest opportunity, or if you could wave a magic wand, what would you wish for? And let's stick with you, Rachel.
For right now, my obsession this year, and it might wind up having to be a multi-year thing, is infrastructure in Los Angeles, right? We're a hub. Ontario, Vancouver, Quebec, they have Canada, or those states, those governments.
The 51st state.
Yeah, right. They invested in grid tie-ins. So these are hotspot locations where a base camp, or the circus as they call it in Canada, lands. And that's where your trailers are. That's where it's the office. It's the central hub of a production. They tracked it and they put in grid tie-ins, permanent. They call them power kiosks. They're tied into the grid, and it's a production electric grid. A production comes up, they plug it in.
Oh, okay. So just basically a plug that they can.
Yeah, it's a big box, and they have to get a key, and you get a reduction on your permit. So I want to see LA have this. We have 3 in LA right now. There should be 50. And I would also love there to be some incentives for private property that is often like a set, like the Huntington Library, or a million others. Zuma Beach may be a great place for a tie-in. To get, that's Malibu, right? So, but to get this happening so that, but that also reminds me, the other thing to remember though is the fuel, most of the fuel from film and TV production is actually from the moving of people in vehicles. So this would help with one small section of that fuel pie. We still really need to figure out this getting it, like the EV fleet kind of thing happening. But that would be huge. If we could do that.
Then you'd be happy.
And last year I said I want us to see the carbon emissions of the production in the title credits. Sorry, and in the credits. And I still want to see that. I think we should know what we're
that's a good idea.
consuming.
Yeah.
All right, period.
Okay, Barbara.
I would say kind of standards around, what we're measuring, how we're measuring, what we're reporting. So more around consistency and getting everybody to, so we can compare. Right now, you can't really compare between,
Yeah.
organizations, so.
Benchmarks and standards.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
that's a good one too. And then,
Yeah, I'm going to say similar, more regulation that requires folks to kind of report and take action. And then, yeah, with sports are kind of at that intersection of, film and TV and music and, live events. And so similarly, they've often just run diesel generators the entire game just in case. I think just tying into the grid makes a lot more sense.
trust the grid.
Yeah, trust the grid. And then the last thing is just like some large campaigns for the public, like Ocean Conservancy is doing Protect Where We Play, and it's all about just, every sport's a water sport, and we need to take care of the environment if you want a place to play, so.
Wow, that's a really good comment. Every sport is a water sport. Okay.
I'm dying for my question, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say it's really interesting. I've had an opportunity to meet William McDonough, who is the founder of Cradle to Cradle and the whole circular economy. And when you talk about sustainability, I was just really curious about, it's such an abstract term, and just to break it down into the simplicity of it. Are there markers when we think about sustainability and we think about the products and the procurement? Have you, in terms of your in terms of what you guys do you have like a playlist of who you recommend and how you go about that decision-making process of what is sustainable? I'm just really curious. You got my mind going.
I'll answer the question one way, and then maybe you guys can answer it another way. So from HP's perspective, as I said at the beginning, sustainability is central to our business strategy. It's not a separate strategy. And we view sustainability in three ways. It's the planet, so environmental sustainability. It's digital equity, so people. And it's also community based as well. And so we have things that we do for all of those three things. How do we impact the planet with our own products and supply chain? We've changed our packaging. We have programs in Haiti, for example. We work with people in Haiti to collect plastic that would have ended up in the ocean that is then recycled to be used in our products. We have digital equity programs, and we choose different countries each year. Spain and Venezuela, I think, are the two countries this year. And then we also do sequestration programs, like working with Jane Goodall to plant 1 million trees. So that's all with HP, and of course HP is looking at our supply chain as well. And so that's one way of, I hope, answering the question, but I'll let you guys go.
I think in production, and Rachel's better equipped than I, there are things like the Green Production Guide, which is very
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. So they understand there is a green production guide that actually shows you and lists. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay,
That's
so
your world.
So the Green Production Guide is great. It's a great resource. There are some fantastic resources. Albert's a great resource. They have all sorts of articles and tips on how to be sustainable. The only thing I warn you on is when you're looking through this is you don't look at it as a checklist, and it's not a checklist that you do on day one of your shoot, right? You're gonna read about this early on. The Green Production Guide has a questionnaire called the Peach, which is a great way, if you've never done any sustainability, is go through the Peach, read all the questions, and see what your answers are. And then see if you're gonna change any of your questions. And Albert similarly has this thing called a carbon action plan. If you go, you have to make an account with them, but they're gonna ask you a lot of questions, and it's gonna get your brain thinking about how to plan for sustainability. So just remembering, not checklists. This is about integrating sustainability.
And certainly back in the UK, we used to have to do environmental impact assessments at the in the planning stages of production. And
when you get Albert, if you want an Albert certification, you have to
Albert,
do. Albert is the UK.
Yeah.
They're connected to BAFTA. You need to do a a draft carbon footprint. So it's like your draft top sheet budget, right? You're gonna do a budget. And then, so when you have a production, you do a budget, and then if you balance, like, okay, this is what we planned and this is what we did. So similarly, you would go in and do, this is what my carbon budget is, based on the choices I'm making right now. And then you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty high. What can I do to change it? So that's the point of doing a draft carbon footprint. Yeah.
And the only thing I would add to that is that those tools end at the production. They don't really follow through the whole workflow all the way. If you really want a full life cycle assessment of the production, you can't stop at production. You've got post-production and distribution and all that other stuff that happens afterwards. And both of those tools don't quite go there yet, and that's another challenge for the industry, is to get the true picture. So it's probably much more than 3,000 metric tons,
Yeah, that's
right?
that's just for the
Production
part.
Yeah.
And Albert does do at least the office spaces and for post, but they don't include everything.
Yeah.
And Matt, do you have any resources to point to?
Yeah, so a lot of my role is actually vetting folks that have a product, service, or technology, making sure they have referenceable customers, they've done LCAs, they have certifications if it's a physical product, because we don't want to introduce them to professional sports team if they aren't ready to, operate at that scale. And so, looking at all that is really important. And then just from my background in supply chain optimization, like so much of your footprint really comes from where you're procuring things from and manufacturing and distributing. So, you got to look at it holistically. But as a sports industry, we don't really have a, unified guide for products. So I think that's a big gap and opportunity as well.
Can I add one quick thing? So one thing Green Spark Group is passionate about is creating a uniform foundation of training so that the people that are entering our industry as sustainability for entertainment all have the same information. And I have to bring up that we collaborated with the USGBC California to create a program called the Sustainable Production Entertainment Certification. So this is now like a lead certification. It's USGBC program. So you take this, you can put spec after your name, and then next year you have to continue to take courses to keep your certification. And we now know, you know what you need to know. Because right now it is a little bit, anybody can come in and say, I'm doing this, and we want to make sure we're getting robustly informed.
Well, that's great to hear that there are now organizations providing some kind of robustness around this. I know we've got another question.
We do, and we'd love to invite everybody up here. We've about 10 minutes left of this section, so please come up, and we do have a question.
Awesome. Hello, I'm Ray. I think, Barbara, you had mentioned that companies now must have a sustainability report at the end of the year. I am curious if you guys have found that companies if you get incentivized, do companies get incentivized for reducing their carbon footprint, or vice versa, do they get punished for exceeding their carbon allotted footprint? I know that the largest companies do. I worked in the food waste sector and had gotten a grant from a company that had exceeded their carbon footprint and therefore given it to us because we were helping reduce it. But wondering, it was like one of the top biggest food companies in the world. So curious if that trickles down to almost all brands, all companies, and how does that work, especially in production world?
That's a good question. I don't know. The only thing that I can say is that I know HP has set its own target for being the most sustainable technology company by 2030. So it's putting on itself self-imposed goals. I don't know that there is actual legislation that gives us a carbon footprint and that we would be punished.
No, I don't think there is, but I do think that it becomes a market differentiator. So it goes back to, if you want, to me, the drivers for sustainability action are investor community. So if you want your investors to invest, you should have a robust sustainability message. It's for your customers. Your customers are making decisions about where they want to buy a product, like HP versus somebody else. And it's the next generation of workforce. So young people, hopefully you would support this statement that you making your decisions about where you live, where you work, maybe even who your partners are based on your value system. And so companies they're not going to be, well, and then the fourth thing would be regulation, right? So in Europe, you're going to have to be you are being regulated already. And if you're a production going to Europe, you abide by the Europeans' reporting mandates as well. So regulation does have a big influence on the actions that an organization will make. But there's no penalty, carrot or stick, I think. It's just a market driver now, too.
As Matt said, there's no carbon tax yet.
There is in the food waste world, so.
That's good to hear.
And that
Oh,
just
okay.
recently incentivized now restaurants and big production companies that they must abide by a certain amount. So I had a company that was reducing that food waste, so I could provide the companies at the end of the year, say, hey, you worked with us, I helped you provide or
Right.
save this much food waste, therefore you reduce this much carbon footprint, and I provided that tax incentive. But I was curious if that was happening yet in other
In
industries.
other industries, no. And on the food point, actually, you reminded me, France, I think a couple of years ago, they made it law. Supermarkets cannot
Yeah.
throw away food. It has to go to somebody.
Do you see a law like that happening anytime? I guess maybe not.
I mean, I can speak a little bit to food waste on set. I mean, we do, when we can, donate. We work with organizations, so I want to see what your organization is, see if you can pick up on from production. But there's some nonprofits that we work with that do come to set and pick up food, and then they will give that, then becomes part of the carbon footprint, right?
I meant more of like, do you see law happening, like I said, there was a law within the food waste space. Do you see anything like that happening within yours?
I don't personally, I mean, I'd have to do a little research to see if anything's any movement on that.
The food waste law is what drove the Padres to start composting with Republic. So I think that being like an anchor tenant can get other businesses in the same locale to start doing that as well. But yeah, I think, California is unique. Public businesses have to report, other states you don't, but I think that it could probably drive policy in other states and nationally as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? This is such a rich conversation. Thank you all very much for talking through the production piece of this. And it was just so interesting to see the connection between sports production and then also the chemistry background of the science of it and what an industry does. So why don't we just go ahead and give it a round of applause, and we'll go on to our next panel. And thank you for coming up and asking those
I know, I didn't
questions.
bring my
That was
phone.
really, really great.